Hello and welcome. I am Jordan. I'm the DM of the Shadows of Zethris campaign, the Chaos Conductors channel. If you are new, welcome. And if you're returning, welcome back. So, now that we have just concluded Chapter 1, and we're moving on to Episode 1 of Chapter 2, I figured it'd be a great time to do a recap. Okay, so our story started with our 6 adventurers known as the Shadows of Zethris, and they were at a bar after speaking with the queen. A bloodied orc kind of bursts through the door and falls onto the ground. The party nurses the orc back to health and finds out that he was attacked by a young half-elf girl at the queen's castle. So the Shadows leave to check the castle to find out that there's been like a massacre, and every guard in sight in the castle has been slain. And it didn't seem like any of them put up a fight. So after searching the castle, the Shadows found a woman suffering from some kind of mental curse. After helping her recover, Valgave digs into her mind and hears a voice whispering, destroy those who are undeserving, and use the children. Quite interesting. Moving to the Queen's chambers, they discovered that she had used a portal to escape, and surprisingly, they didn't go through it. It was then that they decided to leave the castle and just kind of recoup and plan on their next steps. They then ran into the NPC Vehon, who had previously found the Shadows and kind of set up this deal, this ritual that would rid an evil spirit from Xena's bow. Now, Xena was not aware of this plan. So as they went to try and do this ritual, they had to lie to Xena as well, and that was interesting. But they proceeded to do the ritual, and Zethris, the evil spirit within Xena's bow, was not having that. So during that kind of fight, ritual kind of thing, Zethris possessed multiple members of the party, and they had to fight them before Zethris was finally banished from the bow. The next thing that happened was the Shadows kind of spoke with an orc named Balakmar, who they met in the castle. He was kind of in a dying state, but they saved him, and after hearing what he had to say, they then made preparations for leaving Stonehaven and traveling to Euthorin to collect these gems from the Cave of Whispers that the Queen mentioned or requested prior to the attack. As they arrived to Euthorin, they witnessed the savagery of the hunters of this village, as well as Tatiana hearing a familiar voice, that voice being her mother, because Euthorin is Tatiana's hometown. So the Shadows spoke with Tatiana's mother and learned as much as they could about the leaders of this town, called the Plant Whispers. After seeking counsel with them, the Plant Whispers basically granted them access to the Cave of Whispers, where they went in, they got the gems. However, at the bottom of this cave, they were met with the gruesome fate of the Queen's guards that were sent here before them. Amartos, one of the Queen's guards, who is now possessed by a Balor demon named Bisno, sits among the bodies, clearly being the cause of this destruction, and the main antagonist of this chapter. Amartos, seemingly in control of himself for a moment, used the opportunity to, really apologize and let the Shadows in on what Bisno was planning. Halfway through the conversation, however, Bisno kind of took control again and proceeded to chase the Shadows of Zethris out of the cave, and unfortunately, it did result in Xena's death. Having lost a friend and ally, the Shadows warned the town of Martos' arrival, and the town sealed off the Cave of Whispers. The Shadows took to the road, and they headed towards the demonologist Levon, in hopes of finding out more information of Bisno, getting some info, seeing what they can do with it. So, after they spoke with Levon, They learned how to make a demon dampener with the crystals, and they made their way to the Misty Mountains because an old friend told Tatiana there was a monastic there who could help her train, become stronger. So, the Shadows then braved the cold, moving towards the Misty Mountains. They avoided a run-in with the barbaric warriors. They fought these huge insect-like creatures, and they arrived at the monastery that was hidden at the base of the highest mountain. After unlocking the entrance and passing a couple of tests, Jian Qi, the monastic the Shadows were informed of, revealed herself, offering training in the hopes of defeating Bisno. Training does not come cheap, however. A test would need to be passed. The Shadows would need to scale the Misty Mountains to the highest point and collect a green coin-sized stone. With some struggle, con saves, ingenuity, and Loot and Virion transforming into eagles and flight, they made their way to the top of the peak, but waiting on top for them was the light blue dragon. After trying to barter with the dragon, to no avail, the party was hit with a blast of cold and lightning energy, which transported them. Now, Tatiana woke up alone in a cave and ventured through it in order to find her friends. Slowly but surely, she found that each of her friends was suffering from their own personal nightmares that she had to save them from. Each of them could not remember anything, but seemed to trust Tatiana. But from internal scenes such as a nightclub, burning city, fields of dead crops, and even a Feywild-like retreat, Tatiana persisted in saving her friends from themselves. The last part of her test was the hardest, as it usually is. Reunited with all of her friends, she had to navigate through her own hellish dreamscape, a place that forced her to strike down Bisno, who appeared as her deceased master, Shun Pine. After doing so, the party was transported back to the light blue dragon, who introduced himself as Zanor. Zanor provided the Shadows with gifts, and the green stone for passing the test, and even flew them back down to the monastery at the bottom of the mountain. Jian Qi was waiting for them, and congratulated them on their accomplishments. Then there was a lot of drunken shenanigans that involved a lot of emotionally manipulating Valgave into sharing secrets. Remember that whole emotional manipulation thing I mentioned 2 seconds ago? Yeah. Next episode, it bit them in the ass. It turned into a real good talking after Valgave snapped out of it. He proceeded to lay down the law, and after, Jian Qi informed Tatiana and Sumiko that they would need to stay for 2 months to train. During this 2-month period, Valgave, Lute, and Virion traveled to Kessel to try and find some power that Amartos warned that Bisno was after. Here, they found that Kessel was currently being attacked by demons. In fact, they were being constantly attacked, almost every day. In battle, they met a high elf warrior from Kengron named Cimmeria, who was a valued force in helping to destroy these demonic waves, these demonic forces. To make matters worse, the tree of Kessel that provides magic to Kessel, it seemed to be drained and dying. The party was presented with 2 paths. Valgave and Cimmeria stayed in order to continue protecting the town, while Lute and Virion traveled to the Feywild to hopefully restore the magic of this tree. Give it some juice. Now 2 months have now passed, and the monks have now caught up to Kessel to find the current state of things. Lute and Virion also finally returned from their Feywild trip. Cimmeria finds out that a locket that she's had for all of her life has some sort of divine power in it. So, of course, the gang calls in their old buddy Trixon to come take a look. Trixon performs a ritual and finds out that the demons seem to be attracted to the divine power and that's what's drawing them to Kessel. In order to drive the demons away from Kessel, Trixen decides to hold on to the locket and to keep it away from Bisno. As Trixen runs away from Bisno, the Shadows, now feeling prepared, run towards him. They proceed to have this final showdown. After a long fight spanning 2 episodes, they were victorious in banishing Bisno from Martos' body, never to be seen on the material plane again. And this is where our story picks up for our next chapter.